Okay, so how do we master work-life wellness when you are a remote or hybrid professional? We're going to talk through a few topics to help us with this today. We're going to talk about remote and hybrid challenges, work tips that you can add, take action on for success. And part of that will come into how you can prioritize your wellness. Of course, I mentioned we are going to have a Q&A as well. All right, so remote and hybrid realities. In the chat, if you would like, what do you feel like is the biggest challenge with working and staying balanced in life outside of work? What do you see as your biggest challenge in working and staying balanced outside of work? Feel free to add that to the chat. I'll give you all a second to do so. Yeah, we're starting to see some answers come in. That's really great. Thank you guys. And some of these challenges you're going to see on this slide, of course, these are kind of the four biggest challenges that we see with remote and hybrid workers. Some concerns with remote work include feeling isolated from others. That's probably the biggest concern from people that we hear. And we're going to talk about having a plan in place to master that a little bit later. I remember when I first started working remotely, I was asked this question in an interview, like, how are you going to avoid feeling isolated as a remote worker? And I was just really flabbergasted by that question because all I wanted to do was work remotely. I knew it was the answer for me. I needed it for my family situation and all of that good stuff. But the reality of it is that if you are not careful and if you do not take care of yourself and you just dive right in as soon as you get out of bed or get the kids to school or whatever it might be and work, you can feel isolated and siloed off from other people. So this is something that we really want to talk about. Not having appropriate boundaries and having a clear break between your work and home life, particularly where you're working at home, can be tricky as well. Sometimes it's even trickier when you are working with people across the globe in different time zones that might make you feel compelled to be online when they're online and so on. I added office setup on here because their office setup that's not conducive to concentrated work or a space that doesn't do a great job of minimizing distractions during your workday can be really challenging, particularly for meetings. Now, in most cases, you're not going to need and be required to have a separate room in your house that's an office. Now, some people do that, and that's great, but sometimes that's not what's required, but you still need to minimize those distractions and make sure you have a good setup. Now, remote work saves a lot of time, which we'll talk about soon, but staying at home to work definitely can mean less physical activity if you aren't careful. Like with remote work, we don't have to walk to and from our cars to get to and from work, for an example. Just those steps are removed from us because we're not doing that. These four things plus what you added in the chat are challenges remote workers face at times. And over time, if you're not managing and aware of the challenges that you have, it can lead to burnout and other negative effects. All right, well, here's the fun part, the benefits of remote work. And if you are working remotely or in a hybrid environment, you already experience some of these likely. You know that there are challenges, but the benefits that come with not having to show up to an office, many people really talk about loving the flexibility that comes with remote work. I just mentioned we're not driving to and from work, so just the elimination of a commute saves time and gives people minutes to hours even back into their daily life. That time can be used to spend more time with your family, with your friends, doing activities that you like. It can also be used to grab a workout and get some of that physical activity in. Working from home also saves about $6,000 a year on gas, because we're not commuting, as I've mentioned, on car maintenance, on food, on clothes, maybe. And this really adds up over time. So that's a big deal, too. That's a really big benefit. Now, I also have office setup on the benefit slide. I know I had it on the last slide with challenges, but this can also be a benefit because you can set up your workspace how you want. You can set the temperature to what you want. You can have the lighting you want. You can add plants. You can have a candy dish, any number of things that can make you feel really good about your workspace. This is something that isn't as flexible in an office many times, and it can help people stay more focused. For me, I like to have a desk lamp. I also like to light candles during the day, and that is not something that I could do when I worked in an office. So there are benefits. The office setup can go both ways. All right. How can we make sure that we are well? how do we make sure that we are well when it comes to balancing our jobs, our careers, and life, particularly when it's intertwined with where we live? All right. Before we go into these, I want to ask you, here's a poll that's popping up on your screen. These are the 4 wellness pillars that we are going to talk about in terms of maintaining a healthy wellness life between work and life. We're going to talk about them on the next several slides, but what is your greatest work wellness challenge? Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it social? Or is it emotional? Pop up and answer that question if you can. All right. So we'll talk briefly about each of these pillars right now, and then we'll go into how you can implement strategies to address each wellness pillar so that you can have that holistic approach to work-life balance. Physical wellness means thinking about ergonomics, thinking about movement, and thinking about exercise. And movement and exercise are a little bit different, which we'll get into. In terms of your mental wellness, the focus is on mental health, of course. So things like stress management, managing burnout, and mindfulness activities are key components to this wellness pillar. When we think about social wellness and we're working in a remote or hybrid environment, it's important to consider virtual connections, your support network, as well as in-person connections. So these are things that are intertwined within the social wellness pillar. And next we have emotional. So minding your emotional wellness comes with ensuring you have good self-care practices, that you engage in hobbies and interests. And I know that this can be a hard thing to commit to, but it is important. And also leaning into your support network and those around you when you need help. Now, this could be your personal support network, or it could be resources and professionals locally to you that you might be able to talk to. Okay, so those are the 4 wellness pillars. And this is going to be your action plan. We're going to start getting to work on your action plan right now. I'm going to pop up another poll, very similar question. In fact, might be the same question that I just asked, but which one, it's slightly different. Which of the 4 pillars of wellness do you need to work on the most? Which of these wellness pillars do you need to work on the most? Answer that in the poll. I'll give you a second to do so. All right, we were getting some answers coming in. So now what I want to tell you is whatever you answered for that poll, the wellness pillar you need the most work on is your starting point for getting to wellness in your work life. Okay, so prioritizing. We've already done that. You're going to start with one, the greatest one that is challenging you right now. And you're going to work on it with some of these strategies that we're going to talk about in the next several slides. And then when you feel comfortable with that pillar, that you've implemented some really good habits and some things that you can continue doing to maintain that wellness, you're going to layer in the next one. And then you'll layer in the next one and so on. Okay, so we've already started this for you. I'm really excited about that. All right. So if you selected physical is the biggest challenge that you have, let's talk about the ergonomics, the movement, and the exercise. Well, what do we mean by ergonomics? Well, this means how efficient and effectively is your office and equipment set up to help you be a productive worker? So let's start. You can just start with your desk. Is it the right height for you? Is your chair the right height? Does it have the right amount of lumbar back support that you need? Does it have arm handles or doesn't it? What about your keyboard? If you're not using a laptop, do you have a specific type of keyboard? There are ergonomically designed keyboards. I talked about having a lamp on my desk. Lighting matters as well. These are things that are easy to control to a degree. And actually, some companies offer office stipends to help employees have a good and ergonomic work setup. So you might be in an organization that will give you a stipend to purchase office items to make sure you have the right setup. So are there any ergonomic items that you need? Chair, a desk, a keyboard, anything else that might make your job easier? Now, if we talk about movement, this is just about really getting some movement throughout the day while you're sitting at your desk. Being sedentary has a lot of negative impacts, especially over time. So movement is any small thing. Like you could set your Apple Watch to remind you to stand for 1 minute, 2 minutes, or a number of minutes every hour. You could also use a timer and have it go off every hour to remind yourself to do something like 10 squats or walk to the mailbox or walk outside to the end of your driveway and back. These quick breaks, sometimes called exercise snacks, which we'll talk about again, allow you to break away from your computer screen, get an eye rest, but also make sure that you are moving your body in a way so that you're not just sitting solidly for 8 or more hours a day. Now, that's movement, but exercise also is so important. This is not the first time you've heard this. It certainly will not be the last time you've heard this. Exercise is key. It helps you with your mental health, emotional health. It can be social. And of course, it helps with your physical health. To avoid burnout and to stay healthy, this component is so critical. And if we're healthy and if we're not burned out, we're going to perform better at work. We'll also have more energy for things that we do outside of work. So, how do you do exercise with everything else that we have? Remember, I said doing hobbies and interests can be difficult, but it's critical. You have to commit to this self-care. For some people, this means working out before work. That's when I like to do it, or I like to come to work for an hour or so and then get a workout on. But the morning is when I work out best. For others, it might be over their lunch break. Some people might even want to work out after work. Whatever you do, make it a time and make it a habit that you can stick to. And as I mentioned, these exercise snacks throughout the day are quick minute or two of jumping rope, jogging in place, squats, burpees, which I hate, but they are very effective at getting the blood flowing. You could even lift some dumbbells for a few minutes a day. These are all really beneficial. If you have a fitness tracker or Apple Watch, remember you can set these reminders to help you manage and get this habit online. Other things that you can consider doing is if you have a meeting where you're not expected to participate a ton or at all, you could take a walking meeting and hook up your headphones and your phone and get walking. Jumping rope, I think I mentioned that. Just getting dressed and acting as though you're going to an office is a really big component of kind of that mindset working remotely and being, I guess, prepared and on for the day. You could also get a walking treadmill for underneath your desk. You could try to do some wall sits during meetings too if you can't do a walking meeting. If you selected mental wellness in the pool, this is a critical pillar as well. A few suggestions we have on the slide, like meditation, yoga, or yoga nidra. There's an article that I'm sharing in the resources that actually has some desk yoga and chair yoga ideas that you could do during the workday. And yoga nidra is a practice that I do sometimes, mostly at night, but sometimes if I need a 15 or 20-minute break during the day, you can find free videos on YouTube. You want to make sure that you've got your set boundaries and even a digital detox. Now, I don't necessarily mean giving up your cell phone or removing apps, but what I do and what I think is really helpful is to turn off your work notifications when you're not working to the best of your ability. I actually have all of my work notifications off on my phone because when I'm working during the day, I'm at my computer so I can see the notifications, and notifications are distracting and stressful to me. So I like to keep those notifications off. All right. One of the things you can also think about is what time of day are you most productive? And then think about what are the tasks that drain your energy and what are the tasks that give you energy. So make some lists. Maybe start at your productive time with those tasks that zap your energy, because you can't get rid of everything that zaps your energy. You can't delegate all of that, but you can manage it. And then you can move into and look forward to doing the things that give you that energy during the day. One of the things that I found when I was researching this presentation was Harvard Business Review releases a weekly management tip. And this particular week, it was talking about weaving micro mindfulness practices into your workday. And I think this is so important, and it was so timely that I saw this, and I love the tips that they give. They talk about just doing breathing exercises for a minute. Take 3 deep breaths. Go ahead, let's do this. Take 3 deep breaths. And when you're feeling stressed or simply have a few moments between meetings, stop, take those 3 slow, conscious breaths. You're going to inhale deeply, Feel your stomach expand, hold for a brief moment, and then exhale slowly and completely. And then repeat this pattern a few times. Okay. You want to check in with your senses, even just for 30 seconds, to ground yourself in the present moment. Focus your attention on what you can perceive through your senses. Notice what you see and hear around you and the feeling of your chair and your desk. And include the next tip, which is a body scan, top to bottom of your body. Identify any areas of tension. If you feel tightness in your shoulders, your jaw, or other areas, you can consciously try to relax them. And guess what? You can breathe into those areas with breathing exercises, and that can help you. Taking a mindful minute, just pause whatever you're doing, close your eyes, maybe walk away, and then breathe for a minute. Again, breathing is so important, and just practicing these exercises, it sounds pretty easy, or just like obvious, or sort of like, how can this make a big difference? But I encourage you, if this is the pillar that you're working on, set a goal for every day you're going to do a mindful minute of deep breathing, and then put it on your calendar. These are action steps that are easy to take and easy to do. You can go for a meditative walk. Pausing for gratitude is also something that's key. I used to have an alarm set on my phone. I must have turned it off. Every day at 5:30 p.m., it would go off, and my alarm said, "What are you grateful for?" And that was my pause to focus on something that I was grateful for. And I did it at that particular time because it was a tricky time for me with the kids coming home and making dinner and all this good stuff. But this can be a meaningful aspect of your work, a supportive colleague, a positive experience, or something like your cup of coffee in the morning. So you could do a pause for gratitude during the workday. And finally, taking a break and having lunch, or taking a break away from work and having a snack, so that you can really unplug, focus on what you're eating, focus on something other than work, to give your mind a rest. All right, that is the mental wellness pillar. But if you selected social, here are a few things that you want to consider. It's kind of like, in terms of your work and the social interactions at work when you work remote and hybrid, think about recreating the water cooler. So use Slack or your digital messaging system to ask how people's weekends were. Maybe you can set up a virtual coffee meeting just to kind of have some more interactions with those that you work with. Outside of work, you want to schedule time with your friends, doing hobbies that you're interested in, that type of thing, to get you away from the feelings of isolation that might come with working remotely. All right. And finally, if you have selected the emotional wellness pillar, you want to make some time for yourself. If you can take a vacation, take a vacation, have some fun, do those hobbies, take care of yourself. What are some self-care activities that you can do? And if you need to, research help and local resources if you need somebody to talk to or something along those lines. I also recommend turning off the news. We are bombarded with negative stories all day long wherever we go online. And so that's something that you can do to take care of your emotional wellness as well. All right, so our action plan as we're going forward, in terms of what you want to do next as action items. First, we've already identified your priorities, so you've started with that step. I am sharing these following 2 checklists with questions that you can ask yourself for brainstorming and deciding what particular areas make sense to focus on in your particular pillar. So are you engaging in self-care activities such as exercise, yoga, or meditation? Do you communicate regularly with colleagues by phone or video conference? Do you control your media consumption? What about your healthy eating and diet? We didn't really talk about a balanced diet, but that's a critical component as well. And are you getting enough sleep? You also can think of it in terms of different physical activities that you can do, and the ergonomic issue of working remotely. Where is your home office set up? Is it ergonomic? What can you do to improve that? Do you have a daily routine that includes regular start and stop times for work and breaks? That's going to help with your boundaries. Do you take time to upskill or enhance any of your skills and develop professionally? And are you using the tools and resources that your employer has made available? These are all things that can help you lean into the action that you need to take on these wellness pillars. All right, as promised, we're going to have questions in a second. We will be sending you a link to this recording. As I mentioned earlier, be sure to check out the FlexJobs blog. As you're going about your job search, we have many, many different articles and resources for you there. All right, let's get to those questions. Hey everyone, this is Tony. I am here to answer questions, so don't be shy. We do have some time. I have enjoyed looking through the chat and seeing and reading what you guys do to take care of your wellness at work. And I particularly relate to the person who says they don't watch the news anymore because it's unnecessary and invokes anxiety. And I couldn't agree more. Here is a first question. Are there any books that you would recommend? You know what? That's actually a great question. I don't off the top of my mind. Actually, that's not true. Let me see if I can find the name of this book. I think it's called The Book of Awesome. So this is popping into my head right now because, it's not necessarily here's a book that you would read to guide you through making sure you are following these wellness pillars. The Book of Awesome is a book. It's like if some of you remember like Chicken Soup for the Soul books that were really popular 10 or 20 years ago, I guess. The Book of Awesome are just these short little stories about awesome things that people share and write about. And it's almost the opposite of like the sound bites that you might find in your algorithm on social media that's really anxiety inducing. So I think that it's important if we're going to look for books, if we're going to look for resources, don't discount things like the gratitude journals or a book on gratitude or daily meditations or things like that. So if you're focusing on one of these four pillars, you might search for or look for some books or materials that can help you with that specific pillar. So that's how I would frame or position finding that. If I think of any before we send the recap out, we'll include those in the recap as well. The Book of Awesome. Did you type that because I said that, or had you heard of it too? And a link. Thank you guys. You guys are great. Let's see. Are there any tips that you would recommend to boost the possibility of being hired? Yeah, so we have plenty of webinars on different job search topics. And so, you certainly want to put together an action plan in terms of your job search to know what activities are going to be the most important and critical for you to be a standout candidate, which starts with really making sure you're applying to the right jobs, making sure you're tailoring and updating your resume and cover letter and any number of those things. And we do have webinars on all of those topics. So I encourage you to check out our website and to register for upcoming events so you can kind of go through, particularly if you're just starting your job search. And even if you are just starting your job search with the help of FlexJobs, if you've been at it for a while, listening to some of those key webinars on job searching and things like that can be really helpful to make sure that you are doing the things that are going to set you apart from other candidates. Thank you guys for sharing the Book of Awesome link. And also somebody said, recommended the book Move More at Your Desk. So that's a book about physical wellness and moving more. And I saw another comment about burpees in the chat. I don't choose to do those during the day, but somebody might, and maybe I should. Yes. So somebody's making a comment to you about the webinar, giving information on how to actually apply or get a remote job, how to compose an online resume. We actually have specific webinars dedicated to each of those topics. And so our webinar series, we have over 40 webinars at FlexJobs that you are able to attend and listen to, and each one offers a different topic. And so our time today is dedicated to work-life wellness. We have let me see what webinars are coming up. Like on Thursday, I'm going to be moderating a webinar on how to avoid job scams. And we also have a webinar on how to interview for your job. So these topics that you're looking for to get more information about how to apply for a job, what you need to include your resume, we do have those. And, because this topic is on wellness, we don't talk about, some of those other job search issues as well. Is there a way to do Pilates while working so you can stay flexible? Actually, my daughter, who is a student, actually found an app. I think it's the Nike app, but I know there are many, even with the Peloton app. If some of you have Pelotons, you can be a Peloton app user and not have a Peloton, because they have a wide range of programming to include Pilates and even like bar classes. And so those are really great exercises to consider, because you can find them in short bursts. Like, you don't have to do an hour class. It can be 15 minutes, it can be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. You could even find some Pilates moves or put some together yourself and set a timer for 10 minutes and do some of those moves from your desk to get, to keep your mobility and strength going. In the resources section, there should be an article about desk yoga, which I think is really fun. It's a good concept, but just to kind of give yourself a reminder to be able to do those types of things. But yes, I think Pilates is a great idea. I think, even just some body weight exercises, it doesn't have to be complicated. However, if you need to have a plan and direction and somebody telling you exactly what to do, what I would do is find an app or find a program that you like. And then what I would do to make sure you do it is block off the time in your calendar to get that done. Is FlexJobs planning on hosting a career fair this year? I don't have any knowledge of that at this point. So right now, I would say I don't think so. And I haven't heard whisperings of anything in the works. How can I find a job? It's been 8 months applying on FlexJobs, but I haven't got anything. Job searches are taking many people multiple months right now. I'm not surprised to hear that. I know it's frustrating. I would say make sure when you apply to jobs, particularly remote jobs, we talked about some other brief strategies. We also talked about different webinars that are available, but make sure you're using your location when you are searching for remote jobs. A lot of people don't realize this. I didn't realize this when I started working remotely or looking for remote jobs, that remote jobs, even though they're remote, most companies still have a location requirement, because those companies have to follow country, state, city, local tax laws and regulations. And so you want to make sure that you're not applying to jobs that you can't compete for based on where you are geographically. That's just another tidbit there too. Let's see. I've got this question answered. The Book of Awesome. Here's a good question. If you're in the middle of work, how do you deal with distractions in the background, such as dog barking or music? Hopefully you didn't hear my dogs bark earlier today. So one of the things that is really nice about working remotely oftentimes is that you can have a little bit more control over what is happening, and or a little bit more control to be able to minimize your distractions. So if you're at home and you have dogs, what I would do is work in an area where they are not going to bother you if you can. I try to put my dogs in a different room than I am in and close the door. That usually works, but sometimes they will still bark. There is a tool called CRISP, KRISP, and you can download this to your computer, and it will help for if you're in meetings or doing webinars. It will block out that background noise so the people that you're talking to won't hear it and they won't get distracted by it. So that's something that I recommend. There's a free version. That's what I use here. You want to set your office up in an area that would be the least distracting. Of course, we can't, just like in an office, you cannot get rid of every single distraction that's going to come your way. So it's all about minimizing the distractions. And then once you've done that, if you find you're still getting distracted by things, then you want to figure out, how can I manage what this distraction, how it makes me feel and what it does for me, so that you can try to lessen the impact of that on your day, if that makes sense. All right. It looks like we are out of time. We will be sending a link to this recording. And hopefully it's been helpful for you in terms of managing your work-life wellness. I do encourage those of you who were asking for other job search topics and how to find a remote job, please check out our event page, look at our archives, our past events, and sign up for upcoming events. Even if you can't attend, we will always send you a link to the recording. All right, everybody, thank you so much for your questions and your comments today, and helping everybody else with some of your tips and strategies. We will see you all in Big Marker, hopefully, for tomorrow's events, and have a good afternoon. All right, bye-bye.